Hello guys, today we're going to be working on decomposition, and decomposition is pretty much similar to a quadratic. You have to do part of the process that you do in a trinomial, quadratic, and you also have to do grouping and any other factorization patterns afterwards. So again, you really need to know decomposition this year. I wasn't too keen on using it last year, but this year definitely have to know how to do decomposition. Now initially, when you're looking at just a normal quadratic like we did last time, you just said, oh, well, just give me two numbers that multiplied, give me this, and added, give me this. But what you're actually doing is finding two numbers that multiply, give you the product of these two, which in this case is 1 times 2, you'd end up with 2. So when this number is a 1 up front, you don't care about it because it's not going to change anything. That's why we focused on the last term, the constant. But what you're actually doing is multiplying 1 times 2, finding, the product, the answer, the product of those two, and finding two numbers that when you multiply, you get that number, and added, you get the middle term. But when you have a number different than 1, you actually have to take that number into account now. So what you're going to do is, you're going to multiply the first number times the last number. That's going to give me 40. You're just going to write that 40 somewhere. It's not going to play a mathematical role, but that's the number that you have to now multiply by. Instead of just multiplied gives me 8 and added gives me 22, the number you have to find, or the numbers are multiplied, you get 40, and added, you get 22. So again, just like last time, I'm going to find the factors of 40. 1 times 40, 2 times 20, 4 times 10, 5 times 8, and then it's repeated. Now I have to add or subtract these numbers and end up with 22. You can easily say that it is 2 and 20. When I multiply these two, I end up with 40. When I add those two, I end up with 22. So here's where the decomposition name comes along. What you're going to do is, you're going to copy the first term. The first term will not change. You're going to copy that term just as it was. The 22 will actually be broken down into these two factors. These two factors right here. Now, at the end, the order doesn't matter, but try to order them in a way where you can get something in common with this number. So if I were to put a 2, 5 and a 2 do not have a common factor. But if I were to place it like this, 20x plus 2x, now these two have a number in common. And you're going to place the last number as is. Now realize one thing. I copied my first number identically. I copied my last number or constant or term. I copied my first term, no modifications. I copied my second term, no modifications. It's called decomposition because you're breaking the 22 into two parts, a 20 and a 2. If I were to add these two, I would end up with 22. But you're breaking it down because this is going to allow you to factor it. There's no other way to factor the original polynomial. So you're not adding anything, you're not subtracting anything, you're just breaking the middle term into two numbers so you can then continue factoring. For example, a 6x could be broken down into 5x and 1x. It could be broken down into negative 2x and 8x. All of these will give you the exact same answer of 6x. So you're not adding anything, you're not subtracting anything. You're just breaking down the middle term into two other terms. Now let's count how many terms I end up with. 1, 2, 3, 4. Grouping. So that's the whole point. So this is why I said it's more or less a quadratic, because you have to multiply to get to this number, add to get to this number. You decompose. Now you go from 3 terms to 4 terms. Once you have 4 terms, we begin grouping, just like last time. So let's go over it again. The first two become the top group. The last two become the bottom group. Now we do common factor. The number they have in common is 5. The letter they have in common is x. You choose the smallest x. Now we divide 5x squared by 5x equals x. 20x by 5x equals 4. Let's go over the bottom terms now. 2x plus 4, 2x plus 8. The number they have in common is 2. They have no letters in common. So 2x divided by 2 is x, and 8 divided by 2 is 4. Note, I have two identical parentheses. So you should know now that the inside becomes a factor. Let's scoot over. And what's on the outside becomes a second factor. And please remember, don't freak out. This is a multiplication. The order you put them in doesn't really matter. That would be the answer. This cannot be factored any further using just regular means. This one cannot be factored any further using regular means. So that's it. Again, for decomposition, you multiply these two and with a number. Now you find two numbers that when you multiply, you get this number, and when you add, you get this number. I did my factors like you do normally, and you ended up with two factors, 20 and 2, that when you multiply, you end up with 40. When you add, you end up with 22. Break it down into the two factors, 20x and 6x. Remember, you don't just break it down into the numbers. You have to put the variable that the 22 had on each term. So that's incredibly important. Don't forget to put the variable, please. So once you have your four terms, you group, top group, bottom group, common factor, and then you just confirm that you can end the common factor, and you're done. Decomposition. This would be the answer. If you were to multiply these two, and that's a perfect way to confirm if you have time. Again, I don't recommend you confirm every single factorization because you'd run out of time in most any test. But if you finish a test and you have time and you would like to confirm that you factored properly, you can just multiply your factors. If you end up with the original polynomial, you factored properly. That's pretty much it for today.